Nu ist schlecht. Es teugt nicht. Hat Jakob, hat Jakob zu sich gesagt. It's bad. It's not befitting, or it's not going well, Jacob said to himself. As is oili miatzri oili miotzri. And that's where it's either it's a woe to me if I follow my instincts, and woe to me if I follow what the creator wants. Kein Guts kon schoin der von nicht erhois. Nothing good can come out of this. Hat sich gar nicht gehabt, wie der vor hat angehäuben vorhin. He didn't even notice that the carriage had already started to roll, to move. Es ist noch fahren Schnitt. It was before the harvest. Aber Poilim haben schon gearbeitet auf the Felder, but peasants were already working on the fields. Me hat ausgegraben das Unkreuz zwischen die Beeten. They had already begun to pull out weeds between the garden plots. Mir hat übergesetzt allerlei Grünsen. They were transplanting greens. Wie schön als ist hinter der Stadt. How beautiful everything is on the outskirts of the city. Another Bashevis, not so great with the city. Die dosige Schönheit hat wie abgelenkt die in wenig still pachodim. The inner, this beauty contradicted the inner fears that Yaakov is feeling. Azoi wie in die Gehirn is als Mus, giberheudig, voll mit Widersprüchen. Azoi hat da zwischen die Felder als ausgeguckt schön, ganz Bazach. As anybody can correct me, help me, I'm happy. As in his brain, everything was ugly, defective, and full with contradictions. Here in the fields, everything was beautiful and full and in place. Der Himmel is bleu, mild, full mit Sommerdicker Genod. The sky is blue and mild and filled with summer grace. Die Luft hat in sich a Süßkeit von Honig. The air was filled with the sweetness of honey. Jedes Blimel hat herausgeheucht seine Besonnen. Every flower gave out its perfume. A verborgene Hand hat ausgeschnitzt und ausgekneckten jeder Song. A concealed hand had formed and carved every stalk, jedes Gräsel, every grass, jedes Kreuzig, every medicinal herb, jedes Fliegele, every wing, Vermele, every worm, everything had been created by this concealed hand. Sommervögel haben herumgeflattert, jedes mit seine Gemelchtzer auf der Fliegelach.
Gemelchtzer.
Gemelichse. Right, thank you. The summer birds were fluttering, each one with its own painting on the wings.
A Zimmerfigel is a butterfly.
Ah, that makes much more sense. A Zimmerfigel, thank you. Of the butterflies. So each one flew with the painting on the wings. Jedes Fegele, there it is, hat gezwittert mit an Anderton. Every bird was twittering with a different tone. Yaakov hat tief eingeatmet. Yaakov took a deep breath. Hat alleen nicht gewusst, wie stark hat gegart nach dem offenen Schetter. He alone had not realized, he didn't know how much he had longed for this open space. Die Augen haben sich gequickt mit jeder Beit Zwoer, mit jedem Zwoer, mit jedem Bämel, mit jeder Pflanz. His eyes were delighted with every plot of grain, is it grain or is it more general? Produce. Veggies, with all the beautiful vegetation.
Yeah, and bait here is a garden bed.
Yeah. With every tree, with every plant. Oi, wenn ich kon azoi wohnen ergens do a ganz Jahr. Oh, if I could only live in such a place the whole forever. Es soll keinmal nicht sein, kein Winter. It would never be winter. I guess he wants Florida. Ich soll keiner mehr nicht tun, kein Unrecht. And I would never do anybody any ill will or any misdeed. Before hat sich jetzt gekeikelt auf a waldigen Weg. The carriage was now rolling down a forest path. Es ist nicht kein gewöhnliches Sosnenwald. It was not the usual pine forest, nor a göttlicher Palast, but it was almost a spiritual palace. Die Sosnen seien gestanden heuche und gleiche die Seilen und auf de grüne Kräunen hat sich angelehnt der Himmel. The pine trees were standing tall and straight like columns, and on their green crowns there was set the sky. Auf der Koche von die Stammen haben gezittert Broschen, Rändler, Fingerler. On the bark of the trunks of the tree was glittering brooches. I don't ever know how to pronounce that word. Brooches. How do you say it? Brooches, pins, rings, coins and rings. Der Boden ist ausgebett mit Kischenes Moch und Gewichsen, was haben herausgelost, verschichern dicker Reiches. The soil was covered with cushions of moss and plants, which gave out intoxicating smells.
Yeah, cushions is most likely pillows.
Pillows, yeah. So you can picture this. Here he is. He loves this natural scene. Inmitten hat geflossen.
You skipped a line.
Aha. Oh, der Kopf hat als ungeheuben wehtun von der waldigen Gewürz. His head was already beginning to hurt from these wild spices, these wild smells. Inmitten hat geflossen a flats teichel. In the middle was running a small little stream.
Flach is more like shallow.
Oh, a shallow stream, a shallow river or a shallow stream, I guess. Auf de Steine in Wasser seinen gestanden Vögel, was Jakob hat keinmal nicht gesehen, a Säune in der Welt. On the stones of the water were standing birds that Jacob had never seen on the mountain. Jedes Beschäftignis hat upon him gewusst, was es hat dort zu tun. Every creation apparently knew what it was meant to do. Keiner von sie hat nicht gezerrt dem Beschäftiger. Nothing of this was going to upset the Creator. Lois der Mensch kon sich nicht tun kein on avoidance. Only the man cannot move without sinning. Azoi wie Jakob ist dort gesessen und gemacht dem Weltcheshbon, haben die Weiber hinter ihm barret das ganze Städtel. And just as he was sitting and doing this world reckoning, the women who were sitting behind him, another hinter behind him, were slandering the whole shtetl. What a scene, yeah? Hat aufgehäuben der Augen in der Heuch. He lifted up his eyes to the high places. Durch die Zweigen Nodlen hat die Sonne sich durchgerissen mit die Kulieren von Regenbogen. Between the branches and the needles of the trees, the sun was giving out the colors of the rainbow.
It broke through.
Broke through with the colors of the rainbow. Es haben in der Grine Gedichtenis gefinkelt Edelsteine. In the green, there was in the thickness of the green was shining precious stones. Der Kuckuck hat gekuckuckt. The cuckoo bird cuckooed. Der Pickles hat gepickt. The woodpecker was pecking. Fliegelich seinen herumgeflogen in Redler und mit sei Gierkeit, als mir hat bloß angesehen, a dunklen Fleck, was hat sich gedreht in a Wirrwarr. The wings were flying in circles with such a speed that you just saw, like it looked like a dark spot that was turning in a confusion. Shishkes seinen gefallen.
Shishkes,
not shikses, shishkes. Shishkes. Pine cones were falling. von Mol zu Mol hat abgehielt a Schalanisch wie von a shofar. From time to time, there was a sound, a shalanish. This was a word that appeared early in the text, actually. And I don't remember shalanish, like the sound of, like from a shofar. It was when he was in the mountain, he heard the same sound. Jakob hat zugeschlossen, de Wies, wie wollte sich nicht verginnen, zu genießen von so viel Pracht. Yaakov closed his eyelids his eyelashes, as though he couldn't permit himself to enjoy, to have the farganigan, the pleasure of so much splendor. Durch de ledlach, through the eyelids, hat durchgescheint a rose Reutelkeit. Reutlichkeit. Through the eyelids was shined a pink reddish. I don't know how to translate that. Es haben sich gleich genommen Weben goldiger Webnischen gemischt mit Bläu, green, purple. And they immediately began to make webs that were mixed with blue and green and purple. Es hat aufsnei, aufgeteucht, Wandensgestalt, and again appeared Vanda's being, Vanda's presence. I just want to read the first few lines of the next section, just because the contrast between what he describes there and when he comes into Lublin is so stark. I'll just, if you'll permit me, just to read a few more, and then I'll. Das Kahalhuis in Lublin is gepackt. The community house in Lublin was packed. Wie wohl es hat sich it's nicht versammelt dem Vad Arba'asot, although at this time, this was not the meeting of the Council of the Four Nations, nor Blois der Vad von Medinas Poland, just the Vad from the country of Poland. Seinen alle Stuben gewesen full. All the houses were full. Es hat da geschwibbelt und gegribbelt mit Agunas versuchen a Heter Kasene zu haben. It was swirling with divorced women who were looking.
Agudas are not divorced women.
Oh no, the chained women, exactly. The chained women. Thank you. The chained women who were looking for a reprieve or a permission to get married again. Mit geschmatte Weiber seinen Antlaufen von Sera Batzwingels. From women who had been converted, who had run away from their subjugators, the Kosaken or the Tataren, the Cossacks or the Tartars, und sich umgekehrt zum Jiddischkeit, and came back to Jewish life. Mit Almonas was darfen nehmen Chalitza, with widows that had to undergo Chalitza, nor die Schwagers seien nicht willig oder verlangen a zu hohe Beleunung, but the brother-in-laws were not willing or were demanding a too high wage in order to go through that ceremony. Wie euch mit Mannsleid versuchen a heter memea rabbonim, from men who were seeking some kind of permission or a heter. In modern Hebrew, it's used like a permission or a
Now,
release.
let me explain
Yeah.
this. The heter memer
Okay.
rabbanim. If a man has a wife and he wants to divorce her, but she cannot receive the divorce because she has become meshuga, and you cannot,
Ah,
then what you can do if he wants to marry, he can't divorce her, but he can marry again if he gets 100 rabbis to sign
ah,
off on it. And then under the Tanai, that if she is in the future able to receive a get, he must give her a get. I actually know someone whose father did this because his wife went depressed and unable after she had given birth. He had a young kid then, and he couldn't take care of the kid. He wanted to get married to someone who could help. He got a heter memer rabbanim.
wow. 100 rabbis. That's amazing. Thank you. I didn't know. I knew that there was something in there. I had skem oifa chibur. I don't know what that is. A haskama. A haskoima must be an
Haskama
agreement.
afachiber, someone who's written a religious text and he wants to get a rabbi to write a nice introduction saying, hey, this is
Ah,
great.
a haskama. For a shidduch for a tochter, a match for a daughter. Eidos fun a tzava for a
Savoa,
will,
Savoa.
a will. A shutaf suafach, a partner for a business, a partnership
No,
for
a
a prop,
pacht,
as
a pachter is a leaseholder or a tax farmer. So this is a partner for that sort of a business.
for a business. Oder was is falt Emerson ein, or anything that would come along. I mean, this is what's going on in Lublin by comparison, how immediately after we've come out of this pastoral scene. I just love the way he put that together. Ah, das Lubliner Kahalhuis is a zu Neuftref, sei für Yiddishkeit, sei for handel. This Lublin gathering house is a gathering for Jewish things and also for business. And I'll hand it over.
Okay, this call has it's something like the community house.
Yeah, the JCC, the Jewish Communities.
Exactly. Okay,
Yeah.
I will continue them.
Thank you.
Sochrim haben gebracht daher provlich scheuren. Merchants were bringing to that place samples of their wares, allerlei Musteren, all sorts of examples. Goldschmieden und Juwelieren haben gewissen Ausarbeitungen. So smiths and jewelers were showing what they had fashioned in gold and in Edelsteiner, in gold and in precious stones. Mechabrim haben da geklieben Pränumeranten. Authors were getting folks to a prenumerant is someone who would sign up and pay for a book before it was published in order for the author to raise enough money to get it published. Sich begegnet mit Druckers, they were meeting up with the publishing houses und Papiersachrim and people who would sell them the paper. Wucherer haben da sich zusammengetroffen mit jene, was leihen auf Mesachrim. So a Wucherer is someone who lends money with a weekly interest. And they were getting together with those folks who borrow off Mesachrim for their wares. Other Afzuboyen Heiser, or perhaps they were borrowing in order to build houses. Häufiden haben gebracht daher Artikeln. Häufiden would be Jews who were connected somehow with the non-Jewish nobility, I think. They brought to that point Artikeln, was die Pritzim haben gewollt verkaufen. They brought articles which the nobility wished to sell, oder versetzen, or to pawn. Een Häufjid had gewissen an elefantbeineren Hentel. One of these court Jews was showing an ivory handle, ausgesetzt mit Rubinen, which was set with rubies. And an anderer, and another court Jew, a silbernem Pistol, a silver pistol, gefasst in Perlmutter, which was chased with mother of pearl, and besetzt mit Brillanten, and set with diamonds. Einer hat sich herumgetragen mit a gildenem Kamm. One was walking about with a golden comb, und gildene Hornodlen, and golden hairpins, von a verordneter Pritze, from some noble woman who had become destitute and needed the money. Und a zweiter hat gesucht keine, and another one was looking for a purchaser auf a Wald mit dicke Dembis, for a purchaser for a forest with thick oak trees, nicht weit von Teich Bug, not far from the river Bug. Von wann man kann die Plites treiben zu der Weissel, from which they could carry the those are rafts to the Vistula River, and from dort came Danzig, and from there to Gdansk, to Danzig. Die Schrittes und Geseres haben nicht gekonnt herausreißen dem Mischer von jüdischer Hand. The troubles here, the Schrittes and Geseres, the murderousness, the murders, I'll say, and the edicts were unable to prevent the Jewish hand. They couldn't rip the merchandising away from the Jewish hands. And not a very good translation, sorry. Jeden haben gehandelt, a vielen mit Bazierungen, per Kirchen. Jews were even merchandising the decorations of churches in Joislin, and images of Jesus. These are Jews. These are Jesus on the cross figures. Wie wohl, das ist verboten, even though that would be forbidden. Jüdische Importeuren haben Bezeugen von Preisen. Jewish importers were gathering there from Prussia, Böhmen, Österreich. So Böhmen is Böhmen, Österreich is Austria. Italia, Italy. Sie haben gebracht Seidens, Samet, Gewehr, Zierung, Wein, Kave, Gewürzen. Und herausgeführter Salz, Ale. Let me go back a bit. So Seidens is silks. Samet is velvet. Gewehr, weapons. Zierung, jewelry. Wein is wine. Kave is coffee. Gewürzen, spices. Und herausgeführt, and they got in return Salz, salt, ale, oil, flax, fell, pelts, butter, air, eggs, corn, rye, Weiz, wheat, Gersten, oats, honey. Nicht der Poretz und nicht der Peuer haben gewusst von Geschäft. Neither the nobility nor the serfs knew anything about business. Die polnische Zechen haben gehabt allerlei Privilegies. The Polish, now a Zech is a guild, I believe. The Polish guilds, they had all sorts of privileges, aber sie haben nicht gekonnt konkurrieren mit die jüdische Balmalachas. But they were unable to give me a word for konkurrieren.
Compete with.
That's it. Thank you. To compete with the Jewish craftsfolk. Was haben als ausgearbeitet Welveler, who would who would create their goods more cheaply, und oft euch besser, and also often better. Jüdische Handwerker seien gesessen in alle pritzische Häufen. Jewish hand workers were sitting in all of the noblemen's yards or courts. Der König hat verboten, Jeden zu halten, Aptheken. The king had forbidden Jews to have pharmacies, aber das Volk hat nicht gehabt kein Zutreu zu nicht jüdische Aptheken. But the people of the land didn't have any trust in pharmacies that were not Jewish. Man hat herabgebracht jüdische Doktoren, a viele von Ausland. They brought in Jewish doctors even from abroad. Die Galochim, und besonders die Jesuiten, the priests, especially the Jesuits, haben gepredigt gegen die Jeden von die Ambones. They preached against the Jews from their, now I have to look up Ambones. An Ambon, I don't have that. Is that from their, does anyone know what an Ambon is?
I looked it up. It said that it was a pulpit.
Okay, that makes sense. I just don't have it in my dictionary here. Okay. Aroisgelost kegen ze Pashkvillen, and they a Pashkvil is like an edict. It's like a what do they call it in the Muslim world?
Walk.
A fatwa. A fatwa.
Right. A fatwa. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They set out against them these fatwas.
Fatwa.
Yeah. Galothim, Poilin, insane. And by the voivodas, result tsunami by the Eden direct, they were running, this is the Jesuits, to accomplish in the same, that's the Polish legislature, and by voivodas, and those are town councils, I think. I'm just looking it up here. Voivoda, those are, a voivoda is an office holder. So both in the parliament and by the office holders, that they should remove the rights of the Jews. Oder, wenn einer von die Chomrim is geworden verschlaft, but when one of these
Priests.
The priest.
yeah, priests, yeah, it's not the usual word for priests, yeah, became ill, nonetheless, he would send for a Jewish doctor. Yankov hat gehat Bedeya in Lublin zu fragen an Eitze. Yankov had the idea in Lublin to request advice beim dortigen Rav from the rabbi there. Oder bei einem von die Rabbonim was seinen gekommen zum Vad, or from one of the rabbis who had arrived for the assembly. Aber hat sich dort gesäumt bis über Shabbos, but he delayed until after Shabbos. Und bei keinem nicht gefragt, and he didn't ask anyone. Was mehr Yankov hat reingetracht, the more Yankov was thinking about it, als klarer is ihm geworden, the clearer it became to him, als keiner kann ihm nicht raten, that no one would be able to give him advice. Hat allein euch gekannt dem Dien, because he himself understood the law. Wer kann paskenen? Za'acholam is falsch oder wahr. Who then can decide whether a dream is true or false? Und wer kann messen, was is a größere wäre? And who can judge what is a greater sin? Megeier zu sein a Goye, was tut es eus Liebschaft zur Jid? Whether to bring into Judaism a non-Jewish woman who is doing it because she loves a Jewish man, Oder zu losen Deures, was kommen von jüdischer Abstamm, bleiben stecken zwischen Getzendiener. Or on the other hand, to let the generations which arise from him, who has, of course, a Jewish background, to let those generations remain among the idol worshippers. Yankov, I should stop and say, why is it a sin to bring a non-Jewish woman into Judaism? It's actually, it was against the law. It's not that it's a sin. Okay. Yankov hat gedenkt die Wörter. Yankov remembered these words. Mitach shalo lishmoh balishmoh. From a situation where one does a good deed, a mitzvah, but not for its real purpose, one comes to do it eventually for its real purpose. Mahoip them all on tona gute Sach, ois in Eigennutzen. Sometimes one begins to do a good deed for one's own self. Und später kommt die Kavone, and later the proper intention arises. Warft men denn nicht zuckerlich, Rogenkis und Mandeln dem Kind, was hebt on gehen Cheder? Isn't it the fact that you toss candy and raisins and almonds to a child who is just beginning to go to the Cheder? Im lieb zu machen dem Aleph Beis, in order that he acquire a love of the alphabet? Is denn nicht a ger euch geglichen zu ein neugeboren Kind? And does not one equate a convert to Judaism with a newborn child? Und kann man wissen, zu alle Gerim, was haben sich Megayere gewähnt besitzt? And how would you know whether all of those converts who have come in up to this point, haben es getan an apnea, did it without some sort of ulterior motive? Is then a fila der tzaddik rein von apnea? Is even a righteous person clean, free of any pnea, any, I'm translating that as personal need, but that's not quite what it means. I'm just looking to see if I've got that in my dictionary. Ulterior motive.
Yeah. Ulterior motive, yeah.
Yankov hat gehat bei sich, abgepasst. Oh, that's why it was a sin. It's not the sin of bringing the woman into Judaism would be that she was doing it out of love for him, not because she was enamored of Judaism. Okay. Yankov hat gehat bei sich, abgepasst, zu nehmen die Avere auf sich. Yankov decided that he would take any such sin on his own soul. Wird lernen Wanden Yiddishkeit. He would teach Wanda the Jewish custom. It's as das Polische Malchus hat erlaubt, now that the Polish regime was allowing geschmate jüdische Töchter sich umzukehren zu der Rabbuna, allowing Jewish women who had converted away to return to their faith, that Yankov können sagen, he, Yankov, would be able to say, as Wanda is eine von sie. He could pretend that Wanda was one of them. Man wird gar nicht fragen und forschen. No one is going to ask questions and investigate. Dafür bloß abscheren die Haar. He just has to cut off her hair und ihr unten a kopke and put a Jewish cap on her. Wird sie auslernen alle Dinim. He'll teach her all of the religious rules. Sie wird werden neben ihm a kosher jüdische Tochter. And she will become a kosher Jewish woman for him. Good. Someone else's turn.
Okay. My voice is going, so I'll just do paragraph or two. Hat gewusst in Lublin von Yaakov. They knew about Yaakov from Lublin. Then Joseph Forber, Rosh Yeshiva, was his abgesessen 5 Jahre in Gefangenschaft. The head of the yeshiva of Joseph who sat 5 years in captivity. Aber Jakob hat gemerkt, dass es voran am Mechitze zwischen ihm und die andere. But Jacob noticed that there was a division, a separation between him and the others. Die Londim haben gerät zu ihm wie zu einem, was hat vergessen das Lernen. Those who studied spoke to him as if they were speaking to someone who had forgotten his learning, oder wie zu halben haaretz, or to someone who is ignorant, half ignorant, almost ignorant. Wenn sie haben der Mond Loshem Kodesh word, when they mentioned a Hebrew word, or a mamar, or saying an aphorism von der Gemara, from the Gemara, hat man es ihm ausgeteilt auf Yiddish Teich. They translated it for him in Yiddish. Sie haben vor ihm sich gesäudet. They whispered about him. They spoke secretly about him, einer mit dem anderen, to each other. Und geschmeichelt mit dem geschliffenen Schmeichel von Stadtleid, with the carved smile, false smile of city people, was hoping to turn Nitai Yeshuvnik, that have to deal with someone who comes from the settlements. So in other words, an Am Haaretz. Die Kahalait haben ihm ausgefragt, wie soll hat sich aufgeführt in der Knechtschaft. The community people, the congregation people questioned him how he behaved in his servitude. Sie hat gekonnt hitten Shabbos. Could he observe the Sabbath? Kashrut. Could he keep kosher? Und sie haben sich gewundert, was ist nicht entlaufen allein. And they wondered why he hadn't run away on his own, nor gewartet, bis man wird ihm auslesen, but rather waited until he was redeemed. Jakob hat sich ausgedacht, als wissen wegen ihm Advar Meguna. I'm not sure what Meguna is, but it explains it. Hashem Jacob thought that Jacob, he thought that they know something, some shameful thing. I take it Maguna means a shameful thing.
Yes, exactly.
Yes,
Dover
yes.
Maguna.
Mhm.
Okay. Was Maguna in the Eugenereien that people don't want to confront him with. Konnte sein, als haben gehelpt von seiner Asakim,
Asokim.
mit Wandern. Could they have heard about his dealings with Wanda? Es ist ihm erst jetzt aufgefallen, als Zagaya hat reden davon zu die drei Juden. It now just
It occurred to him.
Dawned on him.
Yeah, it dawned on him. Yeah, that Zagaya could have spoken about that to the three Jews who redeemed him. If so, in that case, the secret is being passed from mouth to mouth. Was länger Jakob hat verbracht mit die Lubliner Leid, the longer Jakob spent with the Lublin people, als Kentiker is geworden die Anderskeit. The difference became more apparent. Jakob is hoch, Jacob is tall, they seien kimat alle kleinwüchsig, they are all of small stature. Is blond, he is blond, blauäugig, blue eyes, aber Sorov haben gehabt schwarze Bärte, but most of them had black beards, schwarze Augen, black eyes. They haben beschotten mit lomdische Wörter. They were just, they spewed studious words. Geschmeckt Tabak,
They
no,
took snuff.
they took snuff, thank you. Geräuchert Julke Zibuk, they smoked with these Turkish pipes. Gewusst die Namen von alle reiche Häusigen. They knew the names of all the rich householders. There's is it Mesharet mit Namen, who married whom.
No, Haifiden, I think, again, the court Jews.
Thank you. There's is it Mesharet mit Namen, who is married to whom. Versot Hapti, die oder jener arender, who had managed to procure or grab, basically, this or other leasehold. There's is Choshev Adem or the Yenem Srora, who is important in the eyes of the or the other officialdom. Jacob is geblieben in alt Adreusendicker. He, Jacob, with all of this, remained an outsider. Bin geworden Apoyer, I became a peasant, but Jacob sich allein fortbehandelt. This is how he saw himself. Vorgehalten, this is how he perceived himself. Hat sich aber der Mond, als es nicht gewesen, anders war die Schrittes, but he reminded himself that it was no different before the slaughter. Jedes Mal, was es ihm ausgekommen zu verbringen zwischen Rabbonim, Negidim, Agnosim, whenever he partook among rabbis, rich people, and Parnosim. What is the difference between our Nogid and our partners?
A partners is someone who actually uses his money to support the community, not just wealthy, but also a wealthy supporter.
Okay. So between these wealthy people, seien sie gewesen ein side, when they were on one side, and he, Jacob, another side, was on the other side. Mit Neugier. They looked at him with curiosity, mit Chad, with suspicion. Is sich vergangen mit ihm wie mit a Seitigen. They behaved with him as with a someone on the side. Someone who is almost a Gentile. Aber wie ist das gemalt? But how is it? Sorry?
Again is a convert.
Yeah, they thought of him as a convert, as almost a Gentile, a convert. Okay. Aber wie ist das gemalt? How is this possible? Jacob hat doch gestammt von hohen Niches. He came from a very prestigious lineage. Seine Elternseiders haben doch gepasst Sheilas in Medina's Poland. His great-great-grandfathers used to judge religious questions in the when Poland was still a state. And I think I'll stop there. All yours, Jack.
Wiewohl jeden seinen erst nur gehabt durchgegangen Hariges, was man hat nicht gehört, als seine sind dem Churban Beis Hamikdash. Although the Jews had undergone the
Massacres.
Murders,
the killings, the massacres, about which had not been heard about like that since the time of the destruction of the temple, haben die Leben gebliebene sich aufgeführt wie sie wollten vergessen dem Gsardin. Those who survived conducted themselves as if they had forgotten about the misfortune. Man hat gekrächzt, gesifzt, aber etwas onharts. They groaned and sighed, but it was somehow without feeling. Die Rabbonim und Parnosim haben gehabt zwischen sich allerlei Reisenischen. The rabbis and these Parnosim, I got it as elected leaders. They had all kinds of disputes among them. Jeder hat verlangt für sich Toives Hanoah. Each one wanted a personal benefit for himself. Geld, covet, a tzadin tishel, in shissel, money, honor, respect, and the ability to have a say in decisions. Man hat wegen die Agunas und zurückgekommene Weiber geflochten pschattlich, was haben wenig zu tun mit dem Dien. Concerning the Agunas, the women who...
Chained women.
The chained women, and those women who had returned, they twisted hair-splitting arguments which had very little to do with the law. Man hat gelost Ormeleit warten Wochen und Chadoshim auf a Psak, was man hat gekonnt herausgeben in Teg. They made poor people wait for weeks and months for a decision which they could have made in a few days. Der Wad hat gehabt genommen auf sich einzumonnen bei jeden die Kreunsteiren, achutz die Steiren, was der Wad hat genommen für sich. Und man hat gehört von allen Seiten, als man begeht Recht. So they took upon themselves to collect the to collect
Government
from the
taxes.
Jews the crown taxes.
The crown taxes.
Besides the taxes which the council took for itself. And and they heard from all sides that injustice was being committed. Von Mol zu Mol hat Emmets genommen sich Klogen auf die Tekifim. From time to time, somebody complained about these influential people. Gewornt mit Pitch, Mesira, Ikuv Hakriya, and they gewarnt mit pitch. They threatened to use force, informing and Ikuv Hakriya, delaying the reading. I couldn't really understand that phrase.
I don't know that one either. Hold on just a second. Ikov, hindrance. Yeah, that's what Ikov is. And Kriya, yeah, I don't know.
It's reading, but
Delaying the reading, it didn't really make sense. Perhaps causing
looking
the final decisions to be delayed.
Yeah, Ikav Kriya is an expression that you find in ceremonies for Yom Kippur, but Ikav Kriya, but I don't have one that has a translation. I'm looking it up in Safaria. So the expression exists. I just don't know what it means. Yeah, sorry. Some sort of punishment. It could be that it's a kind of communal punishment where they won't call the person up to the Torah.
Ah, okay. Kriyata Torah, that
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah. Okay, demolt hat man dem Schreier euch reingenommen in Kleisel, ihm zugeworfen a Leckerchel, und hat bald angeheben Leuben diejenige, was hat früher gesiedelt. So then, that the person who was complaining, they took him into their clique, and they disdainfully threw him a titbit, and he immediately began to praise those whom he had earlier berated. Yaakov had gehört, as Meshalochim verchappen Polish Geld. Yaakov heard that emissaries had misappropriated communal funds, oder nehmen Rob für sich a zu hohen Prozent, or they took for themselves a percentage that was too high. In dem ganzen Gejommer haben a Sach Rabbonim und Kohleit gehabt dicke Beicher. In this whole lamentation, many rabbis and communal people had very big bellies. Gepaldete nakkens, and very thick.
Folded over.
Gepaldete nakkens, yeah. Thick necks that sort
double
of fell over their
chins,
collars.
double and triple chins.
Chins, yeah.
That's it.
Sich geziert in Seid, Summit, Säubel, and they adorned themselves with silk, velvet, and sable. They haben geprägt von Fettkeit. They panted from overindulgence. Die Augen haben gescheint von Wohltag. Their eyes shone from luxury. Gerät hat man zwischen sich halbe Wörter mit Remosim und unzuhernischen mit Winkenischen und a rein räumenischen in euer.
Ah,
They
right.
spoke among themselves in with half words. In other words, they weren't honest in what they were saying. They
No,
said half
halbewerter
things.
means hints. They spoke in
Mhm.
hints.
Okay, thank
Well,
you.
Remoisen,
They
that's
spoke-
hints. Mhm.
That's also, but halbewerter has that
Doesn't-
concept too. To
Uh-huh.
not to speak straight, to speak with forked tongue. How's that?
Mhm.
Right. So with hints, with forked tongue, with allusions and insinuations, with winking and secret whispering in the ear. In Dreußen van Koolhuis haben sich gedreht bittere Personen, was haben offen angerufen die kohlische Führer Ganovim Rabierer, gewarnt wie Neviim auf neue Plogen, frische Unschicknischen, a Strof für die sind.
Mhm.
Outside the community house, there were bitter people were moving around who openly called the communal leaders thieves, robbers, and they warned like prophets about new torments, fresh misfortunes, a straf voor die sind. Can't think of the word.
Punishment.
Punishment for these sins. Ja, es ist gewinn klar Jakoben, as die Nemmers teugen nicht. It was clear to Yaakov that these takers were no good. Aber auf jeden Nemmer seinen doch do Asachgebers. But for each of the takers, there were many people who were prepared to give. Danken Gott, nicht alle Jiden seinen Korlat. Thank God, not all Jews were communal leaders. In die Batei Midrashim hat man gedavent. People davened in the study houses, gelernt, gesagt Tehillim. They studied and they said Psalms. Jeden mit Zeichens von Klepp, was sie haben bekommen von die Heidemakers. There were Jews with signs of the blows that they had received from the Cossacks. Wie euch allerlei Krippeln, Blinde, mit abgeschnittenen Euren, and also all sorts of cripples, blind people, people with ears that had been cut off, ausgeschlagene Zähne, seinen gekommen sagen Kedusha, a reinchappen a Borchu, lernen a Perek Mishnayos. The people with teeth that had been knocked out came to recite in time to recite the Kedusha, to be in time to say a Baruch Hu, to learn a chapter of Mishnah, and to hear a drosha, a sermon from a preacher. Noch ein Davenen hat a halbe Oilem gesagt Kaddish, and after the prayers, after davening, half of the those present said Kaddish. Es ist geschwibbelt und gegribbelt mit Avelim und mit Jahreszeiten. There were swarms of mourners and people who were saying Kaddish on a Jahrzeit. In die enge Geslech hat Jakob zugesehen die jüdische Neut. In the narrow little streets, Yaakov witnessed Jewish hardship or destitution. Me hat da gewohnt in finstere Lecher. They lived here in dark holes. Bale Melochim haben gearbeitet in kimmerlich, ähnlich zu Gutes von Hint. Craftsmen worked in little rooms which were similar to dog stalls, dog houses. Von die Rindstocken is aufgegangen a Gestank. From the gutters there arose a stink. Abgerissene Weiber, oft in die Heuche Chadoshim, haben geklieben Mist und spendlich zum Kochen. Shabby women very often in the last months of pregnancy collected garbage and splinters to cook. Kinder seien herumgegangen boves, halbe nacket. Children went around barefoot and half naked, mit parches auf die Keppelach, mit kritz auf die Pennemlach, and they had mange on their, or ringworm on their heads, and rashes on their little faces. Asach haben gehad krumme Fieslach. Many of them had twisted feet, keine Augen, damaged eyes, aufgeblosene Beichelech, Wasserkep. Many of them had swollen bellies and Wasserkep.
Hydrocephalus.
Sorry? Raphael, I didn't hear what you said.
He said hydrocephalus, big head.
Hydrocephalus, okay. Seinen, weißt du es, herumgegangen Schlafkeiten, weil man hat gehalten in ein Trogen Teuter. It appeared illnesses that were going around because they constantly were carrying dead bodies. Noch jeder Mitte seine noch gegangen Weiber mit a Giomer. Behind every bier, there followed women with a lament. a Schammes hat geklungen mit a Puschke, gerufen Zedoka Tatzil Mimavis. A sexton was banging an alms box, calling out that charity saves one from death. Noch die Schrittes seine gehad gebliebener Sachmische Goyim. After the massacres, there remained many people who had lost their minds. Sie seien herumgelaufen über die Gassen, jeder mit seinen Wildkeiten und Hawaiias. They ran around in the streets, over each one of them with his own Wildkeit.
Wild behavior.
Okay, on Hawaiias I couldn't find.
Gestures.
Sorry?
Just gestures.
Gestures?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's usually here it's spelled phonetically, but usually it's spelled Hebraically.
Okay. A Verschämung hat Jakob angenommen, wenn hat sich der Mund seine Teives. Humiliation came to Jacob. He sort of took on this humiliation when he was reminded of his lust. Vor seinen Augen seinen Menschen ausgestanden von Neut.
Ausgegangen.
In front of his eyes, before his eyes, people were dying from need. Mit a groschen hat man da gekonnt retten a Leben. One could save a life here with a groschen, a small coin. Hat jedes Mal zu bitten a Matbeer auf Kleingeld und geteilt die Bedürftige. He constantly got small change from coins, and he handed them out to the needy. Aber was haben sich die kleine Gobben ungesehen? But what did these small gifts achieve? Choptes Bettlers haben ihm noch gejagt. Gangs of beggars chased after him, him gerissen by the polis, and they pulled his shirt, his coattails. Wers hat gebencht, wers hat gescholten. Some of them blessed him, and some of them berated him. Man hat auf ihm gesickert, gespiegen, geworfen, auf ihm lies. They hissed at him, they spat at him, and they threw lice at him. Is kaum entlaufen von die Nachjäger. He hardly could escape from these people who chased after him. Ja, aber wo ist Gott? Yes, but where was God? Wie kann zugucken, als Neut und schweigen? how could he observe such terrible need and remain silent? Sidon says chas v'cholila nishtok en God, except perhaps, heaven forbid, there is no God.